The most misguided point that opening opposition give you was that BRI is a development that is internal from east to west. That is not true. BRI is mainly a development of roads and infrastructure of ports that is in countries other than China, allocating a lot and massive budgets to unexisting roads outside of China, not inside China, right? So it's not that people in Inner Mongolia would suddenly feel that China is something that is so friendly to them. No, people in Inner Mongolia will feel pissed because they are still very, very poor, and China is not investing in them, but China is investing in other countries that are not their own constituents. How will I approach this debate? I'll approach this debate by answering two really important questions. One, does this policy hurt China's role as the supplier of the world? Second, does this policy hurt the Communist Party's domestic popularity? This second clash is very important because the legitimacy of the communist government and its dictatorship is the unspoken popular contract that is, give us an awesome standard of living and we will shut up and let you rule, else we will try and get you out of the government. This is very important because them not engaging to this means that they're conceding to the harm that the Chinese Communist Party might be threatened in the future. Moving on to my first clash. Does this policy hurt China's role as the supplier of the world? We heard a really basic argument from opening opposition, which is China could help in logistics in an awesome way, makes them popular to countries like the United States and the developing countries. My first criticism to this argument is that there's no conclusion as to why logistics is the most urgent current issue that is important for both the United States and a lot of developing countries, right? We argue that these countries are very poor in the first place and do not have any purchasing power. So even if you build infrastructure, nothing will happen because they will probably be more bankrupted and then they cannot buy your products that you rely on these people as for cheap, lower-end consumer market because you produce cheap goods that are easily manufactured in your state in China, right? But secondly, I will prove to you why this is really, really bad for the developing countries, right? Something that they haven't proved as to why this benefits the developing countries. We heard a POI from closing opposition that, oh, Sri Lanka wants ports. This must be a sign that they're so good. Look, this is a bad example first, example-based POI first, and I hope that she proves it in her speech, but I'm pessimistic because we told you structural reasons as to why they will hate us. Three particular reasons. One, this is not investments that the people in these developing countries voted for. Usually it's done by dirty politics of Chinese bribery, so people didn't vote for this, right? So they probably didn't like this. And then opening opposition responded to this by saying, oh, there's check and balance, so this thing wouldn't probably happen. They're talking in a really vacuum, right? This is not a developed country or politics is something that everyone is aware of. This is a developing country where a lot of people don't have access in the very first place to politics. Politics is done by the economic elite that can actually run for the presidency and not think about the food that they're going to get in the next day when they're going to starve in the very first place. The second reason as to why people don't like this is because it costs very high and have not been able to be paid. What previously were funds for internal development is now for useless ports that are done in rural areas where there's no cars that even use the highways in the very first place, and that means that these people don't actually feel the benefit of these infrastructure investments, right? So money that could have been built for the development of urban areas and the financial incentives to give people in rural areas more development and more supply side economics to give it to the urban areas are not given as a result to this development aid because the government is so focused on the deadline of the debt. This last reason is even if it works and everything is fine, this doesn't benefit the people of these developing countries. Because one, remember, the BRI is all done by Chinese workers. That means that a lot of blue-collar workers inside those developing countries are not getting any jobs. Secondly, usually these roads and ports are in areas that are useless. That means that at the end of the day, these people cannot utilize those roads and ports for more trade. The conclusion of these reasons are that one, this bankrupts these countries, which means that these countries do not have purchasing power to our target consumer. So our cheap products isn't brought. But the second important conclusion to this, and this is directly countering opening opposition's point, is that it makes countries that are also the consumers of the United States goods not able to consume the United States goods because they're so bankrupt. This means that people cannot withdraw their money, right? Because the government needs the investment capital to still be in the country and not be used by the people who will probably consume stuff and give the money to a foreign country. This is really bad for the relationship to the United States. This is really bad for our economic reliance on these developing countries. But lastly, the comparative on our side is better because one, even if it's slow and steady, that there are a lot of inefficiencies that happen, at least trade still happens because we're not directly harming the consumer and the consumer's ability to consume our products. But secondly, we propose to you the mechanism of trading either luxury products or investing that money to create and develop our products so that we get good quality and not rely on stealing other people's patents. That means that we rely on a consumer market that is much more developed and much more stable, like the United States and Western Europe, which by the way does not have any political backlash with us. A much better political and economic investment for us. Second clash, this policy hurt the Communist Party's domestic popularity, right? Basically what they say was that internal Mongolia stuff, right? That doesn't work. I clarified that in the first half of my speech. But what's most important to this is that this is a direct threat that you need to make Alvin's argument important because internal revolutions is a thing in China since the incumbent government is always threatened by bureaucrats of the Communist Party that are young and have their opinions heard, threatening the control that we have with the control of protectionists instead, for example, that harms the liberal trade that have built our economy so much. But secondly, external revolutions is also a thing, such as dissidents. That means we spend more money with soldiers enforcing our rule of law, and we also have even worse relation with Arab nations that wants these Islamic population to live in peace and not being suppressed by the government of the Chinese Communist Party. We delegitimize the Communist Party and also harm our image in the international field. It's very harmful towards our economy. We're very proud to propose.